Hello, welcome to Get Your Mind On. I'm Lori Stos. Life is a learning experience, only if you learn. Yogi Berra gave us that great quote to think about today. Today we're really going to focus on learning. What is your desire to learn? What is your motivation to learn? Are you one of those individuals who loves to just learn lots of information? You're like a sponge and very curious, and you're always asking why. Or are you one of those individuals who just loves reading lots and lots of information just to kind of think and have it in your mind just in case one day you need some information? Or you like to just connect the dots between different types of facts and information? Or are you one who really loves to learn and gather information so you can teach others? So there's lots of different ways to learn, and some of us may not have the desire to learn. It just might not be who we are. So let's think about really those learning experiences. I had a friend here this week, and she was walking with me, and we were talking about one of the recent projects that I had worked on, and she was just smattering me with lots and lots of questions about this and that, and I was in a hurry and kind of rushed, and it had been a long day, and so I was getting short on why all the questions. It was a bit overwhelming, and it felt a little bit nosy, and I had to stop and recognize that that's just her way. She loves to learn. She's curious. She wants to connect the dots, and she wants to understand why. So we have to appreciate the different types of learning that people have. The National Training Laboratories did a study and put out some information on the different styles of learning and also the average retention rates of the different types of learning. So I'm going to share those with you today because sometimes I'm sure you think about, why do I remember some things more than others? So if you want to get the most out of your learning, it's really thinking about what are those different ways that you can learn and, of course, potentially share that information. So let's start here to think about when we can retain the most information is when we take time to teach. We talked about teaching last time. And when we teach others, we have a tendency to remember more, obviously, because we've probably taken some more time to learn the content. The second one is practice by doing. When we think about actually having an opportunity to do something, it's just like someone who is sitting at a keyboard maybe teaching you something and you're looking over their shoulder learning. Sometimes it's better to swap places and have you actually doing it, then you have a tendency to learn a little bit more when you're actually the one practicing. The next one is discussion. When you think about back to your college days, you have a tendency to get into small groups, or you had a small group project, or you like to study. Some people love to study in their room where it's quiet. Other people may like to study in groups because they can remember the dialogue and the discussion that occurred, or someone might have a different perspective to help them remember. So that is discussion groups. The next one is to demonstrate. When we share something with others and demonstrate how it's done, we have a tendency to have a good retention through demonstration. The next piece is audiovisual. When you have a tendency to be able to have different audiovisual types of tools, that will also help with your retention as well. Finally, the last two are about reading, information, and the last one is lecture. So when you think about all those different types and all those classroom settings when you were in high school or college and thought that lecturing was so boring, you probably weren't paying much attention, obviously, because the level of activity that you needed to be focused on was not as much when you think about teaching. So let's look at the percentages. So when they did their research, they looked at the average retention of that learning. So when we think about teaching others, that retention is at 90%. So with that information, you have a tendency to retain 90% of that information. When we practice by doing, it's 75%. Discussion is 50%. Demonstration is 30%. AV is 20%. Reading is 10%. And lecturing is 5%. So really think about the difference of when are those types of things that you really want to think about what your best way to learn is and what really attaches to you. There's our different talents that vary by what style. Some of us can't imagine teaching others because that's just not what we're about. We prefer to be reserved. But then when you think about it is you think about, gosh, if I would do that, I might have a tendency to remember something if I'm trying to really keep it in my mind. And that's sometimes also many of us who are parents might think about when we're with our kids and teaching them something and trying to get them to learn that what is the best way, because we all have a different way of learning. We all have a different learning style. And sometimes we think, well, we learn it that way when they learn it that way, but not necessarily so. We each have those different styles. So this allows us to have a chance to think about that in terms of our different ways to learn. So let's talk about our positive charge for today. Step back and think about your learning. What is your number one learning style? When you think about these different ways to learn, what is your way to learn best? And number two, think about someone that you're close to, whether you're managing an individual or you think about a family member and you're trying to teach them something. Step back and think about what is their best way of learning. If you can't observe and you're able to gather that information, guess what? Just ask them. And most of the time they'll be able to tell you what's their best learning style. But this at least gives you an idea of different types. If they're not quite sure, you can have that discussion and have that conversation about what works best for them. In closing, Gandhi has a great quote. Live as if you were to die tomorrow and learn as if you were to live forever. Thank you for joining us today, and remember to get your mind on.